The phone rang at exactly 3:47 on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. I smiled before answering. Because no matter how old your child becomes, when their name appears on your phone, your heart still remembers the little boy who once held your hand crossing the street. My name is Kenny Rodriguez. I'm 58 years old. A retired Navy veteran. An electrician for over 3 decades. A widower. And until that phone call, I believed I had raised an honest son. I was wrong. Terribly wrong. If you've ever trusted someone with your whole heart, only to discover they were quietly destroying your life behind your back, then you'll understand exactly how this story feels. Hey, Dad. Michael sounded distracted. Not happy. Not excited. Just detached. Almost like he was reading words from a piece of paper. Everything okay? I asked. There was a short pause. Then he said something that froze the blood in my veins. We moved to Florida last week. Silence. My coffee cup slipped in my hand. What? We're in Tampa now. Another pause. We forgot to tell you. Forgot. I honestly thought I had misheard him. People forget birthdays. People forget grocery lists. Nobody forgets telling their father that they're moving his grandchildren over 1,000 miles away. I slowly stood from the kitchen table. Michael. When exactly did this happen? We left about a week ago. A week? Yeah. We sold the house, packed everything, kids are already in their new school. Every word felt like another brick crushing my chest. You mean Patricia and Scott are already living in Florida? Yeah. And today? Today is the first time you're telling me? He sighed impatiently. Dad, things were hectic. Hectic. That was the word he chose. Not sorry. Not I didn't know how to tell you. Just hectic. Then I heard another voice in the background. Linda. My daughter-in-law. Michael. Just finished the call. We have things to do. Her tone wasn't nervous. It wasn't guilty. It sounded annoyed. Like informing me was simply another chore on today's checklist. I looked around my kitchen. The refrigerator still had Patricia's drawings held up by magnets. Scott's Little League trophy still sat beside my Navy medals. The cookie jar my grandchildren loved was still half full. Everything inside my house still believed they lived 20 minutes away. Only I was the fool who didn't know they'd disappeared. Why didn't anyone tell me? Michael hesitated. We didn't want things to get emotional. That sentence hurt more than the move itself. Because hidden inside those words was a truth I wasn't ready to face. They hadn't forgotten. They had avoided me. They knew exactly what they were doing. They simply didn't want to answer my questions. After hanging up, I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I simply sat in silence. The kind of silence that only comes after someone you've loved your entire life suddenly becomes a stranger. Outside, children were riding bicycles. Neighbors were mowing their lawns. The world continued like nothing had happened. But inside my house, everything had changed. That night I couldn't sleep. Instead, I walked through every room of my home. Patricia's coloring books were still stacked beside the couch. Scott's baseball glove was still hanging in my garage exactly where he'd left it after our last catch. I picked it up. The leather still smelled new. I remembered him smiling as he said, "Grandpa, when I get bigger, will you teach me everything you know?" I had promised him I would. Now, someone else had decided that promise no longer mattered. Without asking me. The next morning, something kept bothering me. Not the move. Not even the lack of a goodbye. It was Michael's voice. There was no excitement. No relief. Only pressure. Like someone standing behind him making sure he stuck to the script. I've worked around electricity for 35 years. You learn to notice tiny warning signs before something catches fire. That same instinct was screaming inside me now. Something wasn't right. Something much bigger was hiding underneath that phone call. And I needed answers. I grabbed my truck keys. Instead of driving to the grocery store, I drove toward Michael's old apartment building. Maybe I'd find a forwarding address. Maybe a forgotten box. Maybe nothing at all. What I found instead would completely destroy everything I thought I knew about my own son. The drive to Michael's old apartment took less than 20 minutes. It felt like 2 hours. Every red light gave me another chance to convince myself I was overreacting. Maybe he'd left in a hurry. Maybe he'd forgotten to tell me. Maybe there was a perfectly reasonable explanation. Deep down, I already knew there wasn't. The apartment complex looked exactly the same. Children played near the mailbox. A delivery truck blocked half the parking lot. Nothing seemed different. Except one thing. Michael's pickup truck was gone. The parking space where it had sat for years was empty. I parked anyway. As soon as I stepped inside the lobby, Dennis Murphy, the building superintendent I'd known for almost 15 years, looked up from his desk. His eyebrows shot up. "Kenny. I thought you went to Florida with them." I stopped walking. "Went with who?" He looked confused. "Michael and Linda. They told everyone you were helping them settle into the new place." For a second, I couldn't even answer. "They said that?" Dennis nodded. "Sure did. Said the whole family was making a fresh start." My stomach tightened. Fresh start. Apparently. That fresh start didn't include me knowing it existed. When exactly did they leave? Dennis scratched his chin. "About 3 weeks ago." 3 weeks. Not 1. Not 2. 3. For 21 days. My grandchildren had been living in another state while I continued buying snacks they would never eat. For 21 days. I'd been sending money to a family that had already erased me from their lives. Dennis lowered his voice. "To be honest, the move seemed strange." "What do you mean?" "They hired movers around midnight. Loaded everything as fast as they could. No goodbye. No notice. They were gone before sunrise. Who moves in the middle of the night? People avoiding someone. Or hiding something." "I'm still listed on the lease," I said quietly. "Mind if I take one last look?" Dennis hesitated only a second before pulling out his master key. "Come on." The elevator ride felt painfully slow. Each floor made my heart beat louder. 8. 7. 6. 5. Finally. The doors opened. Apartment 814. Michael's home for nearly 7 years. Dennis unlocked the door. The smell hit me first. Dust. Old paint. Cleaning chemicals. The apartment echoed with emptiness. Cabinets stood open. Curtains were gone. Nail holes covered the walls. Furniture had scraped deep marks across the hardwood floor. It looked less like a family had moved. And more like someone had escaped. I slowly walked through each room. The living room was empty. The children's bedroom still had faded star stickers on the ceiling. One tiny pink sock lay forgotten beneath a radiator. Patricia's. I picked it up. Folded it carefully. And slipped it into my jacket pocket. Sometimes grief comes disguised as ordinary objects. A sock. A crayon. A baseball. Things that shouldn't hurt. Until they do. Dennis. Did they leave anything behind? He pointed toward the back bedroom. Storage room. They didn't bother cleaning it. You can keep whatever's there. I thanked him. Then walked toward the smallest room in the apartment. The door creaked open. Boxes. Broken shelves. Old magazines. A cracked office chair. Nothing unusual. Until I noticed something sitting on top of a dusty filing cabinet. A small wooden frame. Covered in dust. I wiped it with my sleeve. My heart nearly stopped. Inside the frame was my Navy Challenge coin. The one I'd earned after 6 years of military service. The one that had never left my house. Or so I thought. What in the world? I picked it up carefully. Someone had arranged it like a museum display. Beside it was a laminated copy of my electrical contractor's license. My name. My license number. My credentials. All professionally mounted. Almost like they were meant to impress someone. Then I noticed a handwritten note taped to the back. Rodriguez Electric. Father and son. Serving families since 1985. I stared at the words. Serving families. Since 1985. That was the year I earned my contractor's license. Michael had been 2 years old. There had never been a father and son company. Not ever. A cold feeling crawled up my spine. I looked around the room again. This time I noticed an old cardboard file box shoved behind a shelf. It was heavier than it looked. Inside were dozens of neatly organized folders. Invoices. Contracts. Business cards. Proposal packets. Company letterheads. Everything carried the same logo. Rodriguez Electric Services. Underneath, in bold blue letters, veteran owned and operated since 1985. My hands began shaking. I opened the first contract. Client, commercial office building. Project value, $48,600. The second, $62,000. The third, $71,400. These weren't weekend handyman jobs. These were large commercial electrical contracts. Jobs requiring licensed supervision. Government inspections. Insurance. Professional accountability. Then I saw something that made my blood run cold. At the bottom of every page, listed as senior partner, was my name. Kenneth Rodriguez. Without my knowledge. Without my permission. Without my signature. I flipped through another folder. Reference letters. Customer testimonials. Equipment rental agreements. Insurance paperwork. Then, one document nearly caused me to drop the entire box. A printed copy of a professional website. There, at the top of the homepage, was my photograph. Smiling in my old Navy uniform. Underneath it, the words. Founded by decorated Navy veteran Kenneth Rodriguez. I had never seen that website. Never approved those photos. Never worked a single job in Florida. Someone had stolen my identity. And turned it into a business. I slowly sat down on the dusty floor. The silence inside that empty apartment suddenly felt suffocating. This wasn't about forgetting to tell me they had moved. This wasn't about hurt feelings. This wasn't even about betrayal anymore. This was fraud. Real fraud. Criminal fraud. And for the first time in my life, I realized I might have to choose between protecting my son or protecting everything I'd spent 35 years building. I pulled out my phone. There was only one person I trusted with something this serious. My attorney. as my finger hovered over his number. I looked one last time at my stolen military medal resting inside that fake company display. At that moment, my heart made a decision my mind had been refusing to accept. Whoever had done this would face the consequences, even if he carried my last name. I drove home with the box sitting on the passenger seat. It felt heavier than 50 pounds. Not because of the paper inside. Because of what those papers meant. Every traffic light gave me another chance to believe there had been some terrible misunderstanding. Maybe Michael planned to tell me. Maybe someone else had used my name. Maybe. But every excuse sounded weaker than the last. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I already knew the truth. My garage had always been my sanctuary. For 35 years, every tool had its place. Every wrench. Every screwdriver. Every wire spool. This was where I'd taught Michael how to strip electrical cable when he was 16. Where we'd spent Saturday mornings repairing neighbors' outlets. Where I'd believed I was passing down a trade. Not creating a criminal. I cleared my workbench. Then spread every document across the table. Business proposals. Commercial contracts. Insurance certificates. Professional brochures. Each page felt like another betrayal. And then I noticed something I had missed inside the apartment. One contractor proposal listed my exact state license number. Not close. Not similar. My real license number. The same one I'd earned decades earlier. The one only a handful of people knew. I immediately reached for my phone. There was only one person I trusted with something this serious. Tim Walsh. My attorney. And my friend for nearly 20 years. He answered after 2 rings. Kenny. You sound terrible. I need you here. Tomorrow morning. No. I looked back down at the forged documents. I need you tonight. There was a long silence. What happened? I swallowed hard. I think my son stole my identity. Tim arrived 45 minutes later carrying nothing except a legal pad and a cup of coffee. He didn't speak at first. He simply sat beside the workbench and began reading. One page. Then another. Then another. His face slowly changed. Confusion. Concern. Then anger. Real anger. Finally. He removed his reading glasses. Kenny. This isn't family drama. This is organized fraud. He held up one contract. If these documents are genuine, your son has been representing you as a business partner. Another paper. He's also claiming you're supervising licensed commercial electrical work. He looked me directly in the eyes. If something went wrong on one of these job sites, you could be held legally responsible. Those words landed harder than anything else. It wasn't just my reputation. Someone could get hurt. Someone could die. And according to these papers, I'd be the one answering for it. Tim opened another folder. Inside, he found copies of insurance forms, equipment financing, business registrations. Then, he suddenly stopped turning pages. Kenny. Did you ever authorize a business loan? What loan? He slid the paper across the table. Equipment financing. Amount approved. $15,000. Borrower. Rodriguez Electric Services. Personal guarantor. Kenneth Rodriguez. I stared at the signature. At first glance, it looked exactly like mine. Same handwriting. Same initials. Same style. Except, I had never signed it. My pulse began racing. I've never even been to that bank. Tim nodded slowly. I believe you. But the bank won't. He looked back through the paperwork. Whoever prepared this had access to your social security number, your contractor license, your military records, even examples of your signature. The room suddenly felt smaller. Over the years, Michael had asked innocent questions. Dad, what year did you get your contractor license? Dad, can I copy your military discharge papers? Dad, I need your license number for an insurance form. I had never questioned him. Why would I? He was my son. Without realizing it, I'd handed him every piece he needed to become me. Tim closed the folder. This can't wait. I'm making some calls. The next morning, before sunrise, I sat alone at my kitchen table. Coffee untouched. The house completely silent. Then my laptop chimed. Tim had emailed me one sentence. Search Rodriguez Electric Services. I opened the browser. Typed the name. Pressed enter. The website loaded instantly. Professional. Modern. Expensive. Far nicer than anything I had ever built. Across the top of the homepage, a giant American flag. Beside it, my photograph, wearing my old Navy uniform. Below it, bold letters. Founded by decorated Navy veteran Kenneth Rodriguez. My hand started shaking. I clicked the About Us page. Every word felt like another knife. With over 30 years of electrical excellence. Built on military discipline. Personally supervised by Navy veteran Kenneth Rodriguez. None of it was true. I had never seen this website. Never approved a single sentence. Never stepped foot in Florida. Yet there I was. Selling honesty to strangers. Through lies. Then I clicked the project gallery. Dozens of commercial buildings. Restaurants. Medical offices. Apartment complexes. Every caption claimed the work had been completed under my supervision. One photograph made my stomach turn. My Navy Challenge coin. Displayed inside a glass case in what looked like their office lobby. Like some kind of marketing trophy. My years of military service. Reduced to an advertising prop. Just then, my phone rang. It was Tim. Kenny. I confirmed it. The company is officially registered in Florida. I closed my eyes. And you're listed as a silent business partner. Silence. Then he added something that made my blood run cold. According to state records, they used your contractor license during registration. I couldn't speak. 35 years. 35 years building an honest reputation. One phone call. One secret move. And my own son had gambled all of it. Without asking. Tim spoke quietly. We have two choices. We keep this inside the family. Or we report everything. I looked once more at my stolen military photograph glowing on the computer screen. The answer had never been clearer. If I stay silent, I'm helping him commit another crime. Tim nodded. I'll prepare the paperwork. As he ended the call, I whispered something I never imagined I'd say. I'm sorry, son. But you chose this. That afternoon, I walked into the local police station carrying a cardboard box. Not full of memories. Full of evidence. Every forged document. Every fake contract. Every stolen credential. Every lie. The front desk officer looked at the box. What can we help you with today, sir? I took a slow breath. I need to report identity theft. He handed me a form. Do you know who did it? I looked down for a second. Then answered. Yes. My son. An hour later. I sat across from Detective Maria Santos. She had spent 15 years investigating financial crimes. Nothing seemed to surprise her anymore. Until she opened my evidence box. She carefully examined each document. The forged contracts. The fake partnership agreements. The website screenshots. The equipment loan. She finally leaned back in her chair. Mr. Rodriguez. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is one of the cleanest identity theft cases I've seen. She tapped my contractor license. He didn't just use your name. He built an entire business around your reputation. She looked at me carefully. I have to ask. Are you prepared to press charges? The room became very quiet. For a moment. I didn't see Detective Santos. I saw a little boy. 7 years old. Running across my backyard carrying a toy toolbox. Dad. I fixed it. That little boy. And the man sitting in Florida. Felt like two different people. I closed my eyes. Then answered. If I don't stop him. Someone else becomes his next victim. She nodded. I'll start the paperwork. By noon. My attorney had filed complaints with 3 different agencies. The Florida Contractor Licensing Board. The State Fraud Division. And the bank that approved the equipment loan. Everything moved faster than I expected. Apparently. When someone steals a licensed contractor's identity, government agencies pay attention. The next morning, my phone rang. It was Tim. They suspended the business. What? Rodriguez Electric Services is officially under investigation. I stared out the kitchen window. So quickly. The evidence was overwhelming. They also froze the company accounts. For the first time since that terrible Tuesday. I finally exhaled. But the storm wasn't over. Not even close. Because once investigators started looking, they found far more than I ever had. Michael hadn't landed 1 or 2 jobs. He had signed more than a dozen commercial contracts. Worth nearly $200,000. Every client believed they were hiring a company supervised by a decorated Navy veteran. Every signature. Every credential. Every promise. Had been built on my name. That afternoon. The phone rang again. This time. It was Michael. He wasn't calm anymore. He sounded terrified. Dad. What did you do? They shut everything down. The bank froze our money. Our clients are canceling contracts. I stayed silent until he finished shouting. Then I asked one question. Did you think this would never happen? Silence. Finally he whispered. I was going to tell you. When? When the business got big enough. When we could finally make you a real partner. I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was unbelievable. So your plan was to steal my identity first. And ask permission later? Dad. I never wanted to hurt you. No. You wanted to use me. Then Linda grabbed the phone. You've ruined our lives. Our children don't even know where we're going to live. I answered calmly. No. You ruined your own lives. You just expected me to pay the price. Click. I ended the call. 3 days later. The business officially collapsed. The bank demanded immediate repayment of the loan. Equipment was repossessed. Clients requested refunds. Insurance companies canceled coverage. The Florida Licensing Board revoked every permit connected to the company. Within 1 week. Everything Michael had built on lies disappeared. Exactly the way lies always do. Then. Late Wednesday evening. I heard tires crunch across my driveway. I looked through the garage window. A rental SUV. Michael stepped out first. He looked exhausted. His expensive clothes were gone. His shoulders sagged. Linda climbed out beside him. She looked angry. But also scared. Then the back doors opened. Patricia. Scott. Both of them ran toward me. Grandpa. I dropped to my knees. Wrapped my arms around them. And for the first time in weeks, I cried. Not because of Michael. Because these innocent children had been dragged into a disaster they never chose. Michael walked slowly toward me. We have nowhere else to go. His voice had completely changed. No arrogance. No excuses. Just defeat. Dad. Please. I'll do anything. I stood. Looked directly into his eyes. Then handed him a thick folder. Inside was a legal agreement prepared by Tim. Michael opened it. His face turned pale. What is this? Your last chance. The agreement was simple. Every fraudulent dollar would be repaid. Every client would receive a written apology. Every debt would become his responsibility. He would find legitimate employment. No shortcuts. No fake businesses. No lies. If he refused, criminal charges would move forward. Michael looked at me. You'd really send your own son to prison? I answered quietly. No. You sent yourself. Linda burst into tears. Michael stared at the papers for what felt like forever. Then, without another word, he picked up the pen. And signed. That was the day my son stopped pretending to be an honest man. And finally started becoming one. Michael held the pen for a long time. His hands trembled. Not because he was angry anymore. But because, for the first time in his life, there was no shortcut left. No fake business. No borrowed reputation. No one else to blame. Just consequences. Finally. He signed his name. Not a forged signature. His own. It was the first honest signature he'd written in a very long time. The following Monday, Michael started work as an apprentice electrician. Not as the owner of a company. Not as a CEO. Not as a successful businessman. Just another man in a hard hat earning $15 an hour. His supervisor didn't know about Florida. Didn't know about the fake contracts. Didn't know about the investigation. To them, he was simply a new apprentice who had a lot to learn. And that's exactly what he needed. A fresh start. Earned honestly. Linda found work too. A small pharmacy hired her as a technician. The pay wasn't impressive. The hours were long. But every paycheck was real. Every dollar came from honest work. For the first time in years, their family was living within their means. No lies. No fake success. No pretending. Patricia and Scott moved into my house during the school week. I turned my late wife's sewing room into Patricia's bedroom. Scott took the old guest room. Every morning, I packed their lunches. Helped with homework. Drove them to baseball practice and piano lessons. At night, we sat around the dinner table the way families are supposed to. They laughed again. Something I hadn't heard in weeks. Children don't need expensive houses. They need stability. They need honesty. They need adults who keep their promises. Every Sunday, Michael and Linda came over for dinner. Not because everything had been forgiven. Because rebuilding trust requires showing up. Again. And again. And again. Sometimes dinner was awkward. Sometimes nobody said much. Healing isn't loud. Most of the time. It's painfully quiet. 3 months later. Michael arrived early. I was in the garage teaching Scott how to safely strip electrical wire. Michael stood there watching for a minute. Then quietly asked, "Can I help?" I handed him another pair of wire cutters. Scott smiled. "Mom says Dad's getting really good now." Michael looked embarrassed. "I'm finally learning the right way. For the first time in years." Those words made me proud. Not because he had become successful. Because he'd finally become teachable. When Scott ran inside for lemonade, Michael stayed behind. "Dad. I owe you something." "You don't owe me money. You already owe enough." He shook his head. "No. I owe you the truth." He stared down at the concrete floor. "I kept chasing shortcuts because I was terrified I'd never become the man you were." I didn't interrupt. I thought if people believed I was already successful, eventually I'd become successful. Instead, I became a liar. His voice cracked. "I wasn't trying to replace you. I was trying to become you. Without doing the work." Those words hurt. Because they explained everything. I placed a hand on his shoulder. "When you were little, you thought my hands were strong because I was born that way." He nodded. "They're not." I turned my palms upward. Years of scars. Burn marks. Cuts. Calluses. Every mark on these hands was earned. You wanted the results. But you skipped the years that created them. Tears rolled down his face. "I'm sorry. I know. And this time, I believe you." A year passed. The restitution payments continued every month. Slowly. Steadily. Michael completed his apprenticeship. Passed every licensing exam honestly. Eventually, he became a licensed journeyman electrician. The certificate hanging on his wall carried only one name. His own. No fake partner. No borrowed military record. No stolen identity. Just Michael Rodriguez. He framed it himself. Not because it was impressive. Because he'd actually earned it. One Saturday afternoon, Scott walked into my garage. "Grandpa. Can I ask you something?" "Of course. Why didn't you give up on Dad?" I looked across the yard. Michael was helping Patricia build a birdhouse. Laughing. Smiling. Working with his own hands. I answered carefully. Because punishment changes behavior. But responsibility changes people. If I had rescued your dad, he would have learned nothing. If I had abandoned him, he would have believed he was beyond saving. So what did you do? I made him face the truth. And then I gave him a chance to live differently. Scott thought about that for a long moment. Then quietly smiled. "I think I understand. Today, my Navy Challenge coin sits exactly where it belongs. On my dresser. Next to my late wife Margaret's photograph. Not inside a fake office. Not on a dishonest website. Just where it has always belonged. It reminds me that honor isn't something you borrow. It's something you earn. Every single day. People still ask me if I regret reporting my own son. My answer never changes. No. Because I didn't lose a son. I helped him find himself again. Sometimes love isn't protecting someone from consequences. Sometimes love is making sure they face them. Because character isn't built by comfort. It's built by accountability. And the greatest inheritance a parent can leave isn't money. Or property. Or a successful business. It's the courage to do what's right. Even when it breaks your own heart.